Hi, folks. Barry Chamish back. A good conversation. I'm actually glad we're having it. Clearly, Don Boys is taking a very black and white Christian point on every subject so far, and I do think there is a gray in the middle. But nonetheless, it doesn't mean that black and white is all wrong. All right? So let's, with that attitude, Don, are you ready for the next topic?
Sure am.
Get ready. We're going to do homos. You ready?
All right.
All right. Look, as usual, you quote the Bible. It warns not to have fellowship with unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them. All right, I get that. Look, you can't approve if you're reproving them. So what's going on here?
Well, a matter of homosexuality, of course, it's always been with us, but it's always been wrong in every society, and it, not just in Jewish and Christian societies. Every major religion has, it's been often been practiced.
Well, you should live amongst Muslims, which I did for 31 years.
Oh, did you?
They may reprove it publicly, but
yes,
it's pretty darn common privately.
You hit the bell, you rang the bell. That's exactly right, Barry. And it's extremely prevalent. And you're right, they say one thing and do another. Now, that's not to imply that all Muslims take that position, but many do. Many of the leaders have been that way. And
they have wives. Don't
get
me wrong.
Yeah.
Their society is not what people think. That's all I say. And I don't want to make a prejudice, all right? But I lived a long time amongst them, and I saw that side of them.
Well, you know, I wrote my book, Islam, America's Trojan Horse, and I interviewed many Muslim clerics across America. I've visited their mosques. I've been in mosques all over the Middle East, and Damascus and Jerusalem and Jordan and so forth, and Lebanon. And I'm not really an expert on Islam, but I know something about it, and I know that it's a threat to our way of life, especially if they insist on Sharia law.
Well, I wouldn't say it never threatened me. Let's put it this way: they have to live a double life. All right, for whatever reason, they're plenty are social. All right, they have to live a double life, and they do.
Yeah. Well, again, there's a difference in the.
Should they have to? I mean, that's the issue. Should they be forced into living hypocrisy? Another issue. It goes deeper than that, but they do. Yes,
and there's a difference in the ordinary Muslim who's grown up in the Muslim faith. Sometimes they don't know a great deal about it. They just know they're Muslims, and then sometimes they come to America and they see there is another position. And I've talked to many Muslims, and I found them, many of them been very kind and helpful. But also I've found that some of the Muslim clerics are, well, as you said, hypocritical, and it is a fact, Barry. The Quran clearly teaches this. The footnotes even make it very clear that every
they
Muslim...
don't like it openly.
Yes, right.
But they have listen, there's another side, repression. It says if you want to dive deep, it goes deep. But nonetheless, they're frankly quite horny, and they have no way out. And I'm talking, by the way, mostly working Muslims that leave it be at that. They know that what they're doing is not approved of, but they all agree we won't say anything.
Yeah. Well, every Muslim is obligated not only to obey the Quran, but also the Hadith. and the teachings and the activities and behaviors of Muhammad. And Muhammad did have numerous wives, depending on the historian you read, up to 20.
It's not wives we're talking about. That you have to kill potential rivals. That's a warlike society to give you 4 wives. But this is separate.
Yes, yeah. Well, and of course, the really hot issue is his 9-year-old wife, and in every society I know, a 9-year-old wife means pedophilia.
Actually, that was not an issue. I know it exists. All right.
Yeah.
It wasn't an issue I saw in Israel. Leave that be. All right. Let's not. You're right. That issue exists. I didn't see it.
I see. Well, it's true all over the Middle East, other nations, and they even marry. One cleric has said recently that there's no age limit. You can. They do say the age limit on consummating the marriage, but just like Muhammad married Aisha when she was 6, and then consummated the marriage when she was 9, and that is totally acceptable.
How did he court her? Did he give her flowers, wine?
No, he didn't court her.
A 9-year-old bride.
He took her when she was 6, but he took her as a wife when she was 9, and the encyclopedia.
So he gave her a teddy bear. And what do you do to court a 6-year-old? All right.
There's no courting. There's no courting. There's no courting to it.
But amongst the Palestinians, this I didn't see existing.
Yeah, well, it's all over in all the Middle East nations that I've been in, and that older men can purchase and a contract with a young bride at whatever age, just as long as he's careful about consummating the marriage when she's older. But that's
when do you consummate a 6-year-old girl?
9-year-old girl.
9-year-old girl.
Yeah, he was married at 6 and consummated at 9, and this is extremely common. It
hurts like hell.
Yeah. Pardon me.
Yeah,
but anyway,
I got what you said. I know it exists.
Homosexuality is a problem. It's a major problem. Barry, it's in America. The major change into same-sex marriage, it's not marriage, but homosexuality is the biggest cultural change in the history of any nation. In 10 years' time, 10 to 12 years' time, this change has been. Even just a few years ago, the president was against same-sex marriage. And so was Hillary, and now they both have changed. Now, of course, there's a difference in same-sex marriage and homosexuality, but they were against same-sex marriage, and now it's acceptable by most American people. The homosexuals have done a magnificent job in changing society, and
so we give them credit.
Well, yes, I reluctantly have to, because they have been very successful in getting the job done. They many years ago, a book was published telling them how to do it, to play up, be a victim, and to accuse your accusers. And they were told how to do it, and they followed the game plan. And of course, with the gullible media, they followed right along. And now they don't want to even hear the opposite side. It's astounding. Thousands of years of scriptural teaching and then common sense, and we've turned to the side in 10 or 12 years' time. That's amazing. And somebody just said
we're gonna narrow that down. Let's go in order. That's not precisely the whole story, but neither here nor there. What you write interests me more right now. Okay. We will sell them a meal in our restaurant, but we will not cater their wedding reception. That's your standing ground.
I think any sane person would take that position. I don't think that's argumentable at all. Any sane person would say, first of all, as a businessman, I got a right to sell to whoever I please. That is, in free America, that was true. This was not an issue 30 years ago. Today, and it's astounding, it's absolutely amazing that homosexuals are saying that this is legitimate, that they don't have to bake a cake saying all homosexuals are faggots going to hell. They say that the homosexual bakery does not have to legally do that. However, we, as a Christian bakery, you cannot say that I will refuse to bake a cake honoring homosexual marriage. Wait a minute here. One has the right, but the other doesn't have the right. That's insane. Plus, being incredibly un-American and unfair. I'm
they don't view it that way. They say they have the same rights as you or me or anyone.
Well, but they have the same responsibility also. If a baker doesn't have a right to say, I will not bake a cake honoring gay marriage, then the homosexual should have to say that I also have to make a cake then. I'll be required to, it'll be discrimination. If I don't.
First of all, does he want a baker spitting in his cake? I mean, really, is he going to choose him?
Yeah, I agree. But the point is that it's got to be fair, surely justice. The Constitution will not permit unequal treatment, and to say that a homosexual must bake a cake, but the homosexual
that's
doesn't.
The issue, and I say, who wants to be at a wedding where the baker could be defecating in the wedding cake? You know, it's not really something that'll come up.
Yeah. But of course, it's already happened. You know, with the flowers.
Well,
and the photographer.
it's certainly the issue that happened. The reality is something different, but they did make an issue of that point that it could happen.
No, this has already happened.
You're saying a baker was forced to bake a wedding cake in Indiana for a couple of sissies?
Yeah, I don't remember the state now, Colorado. They were forced to bake a cake. See, the Christians are saying we'll bake a cake and we sell it. And in fact, they did. They sold the cakes to the homosexuals. But when the cake was honoring homosexuality and approving of homosexuality, that's when the Christians said, "Nope, we won't do that. We'll sell you cakes and we'll all that, but we'll not approve homosexuality." However, on the other side, the homosexuals have the right. They can discriminate. That's insane. As well as being unconstitutional.
All right, I'm going to read your writing right now. It's quite interesting, and I've got a very wise listenership. I think they know what is happening. Here's your writing. The homosexual lobby's policy is if we don't approve them, then they accuse us of intolerance. Hypocrites. Sodomy is evil. Now, honest to goodness, that's kind of giving away the show. Well,
down through the centuries, at least history and Bible stands on my side. Sodomy is evil. Everybody knows about Sodom and Gomorrah. The cities of the plain were destroyed because of sodomy. And so these people who say that sodomy or that homosexuality is all right are newcomers in the argument. That's for sure. Because I got thousands of years of history and biblical teaching that supports my position.
Well, their position is slyer than yours. All right? Let me say that right away. They use language better. All right? Now, listen to what you write. And this kind of threw me because I know the history a bit. Homosexual behavior has been forbidden by every religion and every civilization. Even during the golden age of the Greeks, homosexuality may have been common amongst the ruling class, but among the common people, they knew that such activity was contrary to nature and could destroy the human race. I know a little about the Greek culture. The army, look, the soldiers may have had wives, but they all of them, common and ruling, had homosexual lovers in the army.
Well, the way you can say all, you can say that most.
All. It was the common culture.
In some societies, but not in all of Greece.
Even in Sparta, They were 25 years in the Army. They got crazy and horny. They had homosexual soldier lovers. The two of them.
Yeah, but again, they knew that was not normal or natural. It wouldn't continue the human race, and so they
did not know it. They praised it.
No, they had
They
wives.
wrote poems to their soldier lovers.
Yeah, but they had wives because they knew that the human race is going to stop if everybody goes to homosexuality. That's for sure. It's abnormal. It's abnormal. No, it's wrong.
That was their culture. Look, you can't say all. There were times in human race when homosexuality, basically because of the Army, they had to spend decades in the place. They got lonely.
Yes.
So they found a new culture. Wife at home, lover in the Army, that was common culture.
But again, the point is, it was still wrong. It was still contrary.
Well, they didn't know it.
It was contrary to common. It was contrary to the Scripture. It was contrary to common sense.
Not theirs.
It was contrary to common sense and nature. They knew it was abnormal.
Common except Greek, I guess, and also, by the way, the Romans were more hidden, but they had to spend a long time in the Army, and they got a little peculiar during those decades.
Well, but then, of course, many of them carried their wives with them in the war, and their lovers, etc. So there's no way to say that all did this.
Again, as I said before, I know a little bit, not a lot, but enough to know the Greek in the golden age of Greece, homosexuality was the norm. Did I lose you?
No, I just disagree with you. I think that homosexuality was fairly common, but it was mainly in the elite, the ruling class, and no doubt in the soldiers. And they were separated, especially in Sparta. The men occasionally would make it to their wives. If I remember rightly, I wrote about this. I think it was illegal. They went AWOL to visit their wives from time to time until I think they were 35 years of age. Then they could be with their wives. But so there's no doubt homosexuality was common in the Army too. But that's just the Army and the ruling class. That's not the rest of society.
No, it was the common soldiers.
Yeah, but there's far more to Greece in any society than just the military or the ruling class. The merchants, the hoi polloi, they're out there, and they were not homosexuals. I'm sure there was some, but not nearly like in the ruling class.
Just keep that in mind when we go on to our next argument. It's not quite as black and white as you're painting it. And I'm going to state the obvious. I am not homosexual. All right.
Yeah.
But again, I had friends who were, and they couldn't live with it. And Bruce had he killed himself. He couldn't live in the world not being heterosexual. Some people are just born that way.
No, they're not. They're not born. They're not born that way. That's the made pitch up top. They're born that way. How can you find them guilty of anything? How can you accuse them? How can you gun on them? They were born that way. That's just natural. That was not true. And nobody supported that.
Look, without naming names, they acted in a peculiar, different way from kindergarten. They were not in some way trained to be what they turned into.
They have never found any biological, and there have been 2 or 3 homosexual, by the way.
I knew they were going to be homos when I was a kid.
But there's been no biological proof at all of any homosexuality from a biological basis. No gene, no homosexual gene. You're right.
All right, I'm presenting the opposite argument. And by the way, any homosexual listening will not say I'm exactly drum beating on his side. All right, but you have to look at it. My goodness gracious. You know, when you quote the Bible, now be ready for debate, because I know, again, not a lot, but enough. You write of the Ten Commandments, which, by the way, you write, we all have to be held accountable. Not necessarily Muslims, not Buddhists,
no,
not Chinese.
That's where you're,
I mean, it's not all, but
that's where you're wrong.
Nonetheless, you're right. Let me be very clear. Do not discriminate is not one of the Ten Commandments. In fact, it falls under al-tavir, avirah, whatever it is. Do not give false testimony. It falls under that.
The fact is, wrong is wrong. It doesn't matter whether you're a Muslim, Roman Catholic, Pentecostal, or nothing. Homosexuality is wrong.
Buddhist, or Taoist or something like that.
The what?
Buddhist, Taoist. There's a world out there that isn't Christian. A very big world with about 6 billion people.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's why Christ said, go into all the world and preach the gospel. How that Christ died and was raised from the dead, and that whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved.
Leading. I'm just going to say one thing. The Ten Commandments really is not big on what you said. Do not discriminate. Falls under law, tavir, whatever the damn thing is, false testimony. It falls under that. Don't lie.
There is no discrimination. It's a matter of right and wrong. You see, just because you put the label on it doesn't make it so. I'm maintaining that the Bible clearly teaches that homosexuality is wrong.
No matter how you interpret it, it is do not rape. Try and find it. It's not there.
But the fact is, the Bible is very clear throughout, in Leviticus and in Romans, throughout in 1 Corinthians, that homosexuality is wrong. It's an evil. It's an abomination. It's contrary to common sense. It's contrary to society.
But you can still rape if you're going by your way.
No, you can't rape. Rape is wrong. I think it's wrong. I think it's wrong for these numerous people, many of them in our churches, who are living together and haven't been married. That's fornication. God forbids it. It's not just that I'm against homosexuality. Christ even said you're not even supposed to lust after a woman. And so,
well, as I said before, I don't believe any homosexual listener thinks I'm beating the drum for him, but there are loopholes that you can listen. You can drive a truck through some of them.
No, you can't.
I'm going to quote you again. And again, this is your writing. And you have to look at the logic. You say, I love people enough to tell them about perversion. I don't think they love being taught. All right. Explain that.
But see, Bear, what's wrong with using words that are good English words? Sodomy, degenerate, perversions, pervert. These are all good words, but because it's such a horrible association, people say, well, let's don't use it. You'll offend people. So what do you call them? So let's call them gay. I never use that term because it's
a derogation today. You don't have to bother with that term. It's turned into the, look, you say gay, it's not a good thing to say about something or someone.
The word "gay" is a appropriation of the word. It's not gay. There's nothing gay in the homosexual way.
Oh, nothing. Wait. We have a brief look. When we come back, I'll plug me and you'll plug you. Actually, this is the most enlivened part of the argument. We may stick with it almost to the end of the show, where I do have a few other quotes from you. But come back in 3 minutes. Actually, don't go away. Come back in 3. This is Barry Chamish, by the way.
Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy, in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host, Melody Cedarstrom, right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, 1-800-375-4188.
Hi, folks. Good show. Don Boy's guest, Barry Chamish host. You know you get all my books at lulu.com, www.lulu.com. There's a search box. Type in my last name, Chamish, Chamish. And thanks to David Samarin, I've got a website. It's still up to date. That's www.barrychamish.com. And by the way, Don, plug yourself.
Yes, my books are available at Amazon.com. And Don Boys, PhD, they can find what they... I also have a new book I forgot to mention, Evolution, Fact, Fraud, or Faith, and I deal with all the hot issues surrounding creation, evolution. And maybe my book, Martin Luther King, Judged by His Character, Not His Color, may be free. I hope people don't think I just didn't know we would be talking about this, and so it may not be free, but it was free for a few days on Amazon.com. They can also go to CSTnews.com, and all my printed books and my e-books are available there, plus numerous free columns on I guess scores of subjects, and that's all free. CSTnews.com.
All right, let's finish off this. I've got a bunch more. You could have been on for 3. What do you know? All right, let's finish with the homos. Ready?
Yeah.
All right. What you say is that, well, in short, what you're saying is we'll serve them, but we won't serve their wedding reception. And
right.
All right, explain that.
Well, isn't it amazing that in America, land of the free, home of the brave, that a businessman is told that he has to perform something or prove something that is totally contrary to everything he believes, that's insanity. Plus being un-American and unconstitutional. Now, you can't do something like that. That's incredible. That's not discrimination. What about the rights of the individual businessman, the Christian businessman? He didn't get his money from the state or the federal government. He put his time, his talent, his money, and took all the risk. And now he decides, no, I'm not going to approve something that I feel so strongly about. That's my deeply held religious belief. And because of the First Amendment plus the Bible, I'm simply not going to comply. I'll go to jail first. It's insanity that this is even a question. How can anybody argue with that position? It's not that they're being mean, not that they're being discriminating. They're simply saying, I'll run my business the way I choose to run my business. And I find it amazing.
That's awfully close to what I suffered through as a Jew when I was a kid.
I'm sure that.
Between country clubs, all kinds of places.
Of course, yes.
Said no Jew. Now, they're using that argument on no homosexual, but it really, there is a lot of applicability to this.
Well, you couldn't help being a Jew. You were born a Jew, and
yes.
This is again, this was the heart of the argument. They choose homosexuality. It is a choice that every person makes. Now, some are more feminine than others. We know that, but when they choose the homosexual behavior, the lifestyle, that is a choice. And
so you're saying because gays are from all races and religions, they have no right to the same arguments.
Well, they have rights to arguments. They have a right to go wherever they want to go and do what they want to do. But as a businessman, they don't have a right to tell me how to run my business. That's ridiculous. And by the way, isn't it kind of silly everybody talking about being offended? I mean, everybody's offended now and then. Being an American doesn't mean you have a right not to be offended. That's ridiculous. And you get over it. Grow up. And whether it's a black or whether it's a Jew, whether it's homosexual or a Baptist or whomever, you're going to be offended in life. Accept it and move on, and don't whine about it. But homosexuals they say they want acceptance. They want just to be freedom, to be left alone. They want respectability. They want us to approve their lifestyle, and that's not going to happen with clear thinking, especially biblically-based people. That's not going to happen, not until pigs learn to fly. And
I'm going to quote you, and again, in this quote, all right, here's your quote. We are castigated if we do not love homosexuals, but they don't have to love homophobes. Now, biblically, I don't think that's true. I think they have to. Well,
that's not a concern most of us have. I want to be liked.
That may be absolutely right. But again, if you're interpreting this biblically, you don't love homosexuals either.
No.
Now, let's do this biblically. If you love homosexuals, they got to love homophobes.
Yes, but let me go back. I do love homosexuals. I've had homosexual friends. I do love homosexuals. I don't like what they do. There's a big difference there. And they want me to approve and even give them some respectability. That is not going to happen.
But biblically, if they want you to approve, they don't equally love you.
Well,
they call you a homophobe. Someone who hates them.
Yes, and they want tolerance, but they don't want to show tolerance. Isn't it interesting that these people are always yelling about tolerance, and yet they're the ones that want to close down the bakeries and go after a little grandmama who owns a bed and breakfast because she didn't want to take care of have her place out to two homosexual men, and they want to close her down. The viciousness is astounding. And they have a right to have their own businesses. They have a right to say that we're just going to advertise to and cater to.
I don't think you love them at all. I really don't think you love them. Now,
that's your judgment. See, that's a judgment you've made, wrongly. But you've not proved that. See, you've made a statement, but that's no proof at all. And thinking people would say, well, that's his opinion. In fact, when I was a legislator, I set up a counseling session at my expense to help homosexuals. And in the state of Indiana, and I do love homosexuals, but just because I feel strongly about it, because the Bible, God loves people, but God destroyed the homosexuals in Sodom and Gomorrah because sin has consequences. And I find
another word than love. By the way, here's what you write, all right? Love everyone, but don't sleep with everyone. That's what you write. I'm not sure. What do you mean by that?
First of all, as heterosexuals, don't sleep around, and as homosexuals, don't sleep around. Real simple. God's plan, and it goes all the way back to Genesis, and it's reinforced by Christ, one man, one woman for a lifetime, and a man being totally 100% faithful to his wife all the days of his life. He loves her, he cherishes her, he takes care of her, she loves him, she obeys him, she has children, she is part of the family just like he is, and they raise children that will be honorable and honest and hardworking and be a credit to America and a credit to the family. That's God's plan. But we're living in a society where anything goes. Let me ask you something, Barry. If you don't have a standard, you have all kinds of problems. And if you believe there are loopholes, then you're in trouble. I believe that we have a final standard. It's been recognized that way for thousands of years, and that is the Bible, God's final authority. And if you say there are loopholes and about anything is accepted, then
there is a separation between church and state.
Has nothing to do with it.
They don't always agree.
Has nothing to do with it. There is a separation of church. There's a separation of church and state, but not a separation of God and state. And
I'm not sure I understand where church and God are different.
Well, there's a vast difference. The church is a relatively small organism that's all over the world, to be sure. But again, that's one thing, and God is in.
Well, don't they represent God?
Yes, of course they do. But that it's one thing in a state. We don't. I would not be. If somebody wanted Jerry Falwell, who was a friend of mine for 40 years, to be president, I would not be voting for him, Jerry, because he was a Baptist. If he didn't line up with what I believe politically and economically and so forth, I'd vote against him. We don't believe in a theocracy. I don't believe that there's some out there who do. I don't. But I do believe that every legislator ought to think about consequences. Hey, if we make this legal, where's this going to end? We're going to have child incest. In academia, right now, for the last few years, they've been wanting to make incest legal.
Child incest.
Incest.
The state upholds. There are laws against that.
But they're trying to make it illegal.
It's not just the Bible here.
Yes, what I'm saying that in academia they're saying that children have a right to sexual expression and that those laws should be struck down, and that as long as there's no force involved, children have a right to a sexual life even among family members.
I believe that won't happen.
But you got your head in the sand. If we didn't think this was going to happen, we would have had this guy 12 years ago. If you'd have said that the Supreme Court is going to try to decide what marriage is, you said that's crazy. Everybody knows what marriage is. Or I talk about transgender. I
always thought the word union would do. Don't mix them up. Find a fancier word than marital union or something. Marriage is not a good definition. It disagrees with too many things. That's my little point of view. They should have accepted something that sounds like it. But, again, that's not what's happening. Okay, fair enough.
Well, I'm telling you that there will be hundreds, thousands of people in prison because we will not comply with this thing. If they try to change marriage...
Where are they? No one's going to prison over this.
Do what?
Come on, no one's going to prison over this.
Oh, yes, they will. If this passes, and homosexuals come up and ask a pastor to marry them, and he says, no, I won't do it, or no, you can't use my church, that they will go to jail because that's going to happen.
Actually, that may happen. I know a case like that. Okay. That's more than possible. I know in Idaho something like that is going on. They sued the
that's right.
city for making them do gay marriages.
That's right. And I know a few thousand pastors who simply will say no and let's go to jail because they will not
who'd
do
ask them? Again, if you want a really happy marriage, something you'll remember, wouldn't you want a sympathetic preacher?
Barry, this is the agenda of the homosexual community, the lesbian gay crowd. They go after this thing in Walkerton, Indiana. You remember the pizza parlor. What sane couple would ask a pizza parlor to cater their reception?
They were
targeted.
You went to an official office, I guess. I don't know if they're preachers actually, but you could get married that way.
I didn't hear you.
If you go, all right, leave it be. Let's just say that they serve an office that does marriages.
Yeah.
This preacher.
Yes.
Well, he'd have to do it.
No, he wouldn't. He would not do it. See, now, let's look at this again. You're saying in America, a person is forced to do something against his will to satisfy some other group so they won't be offended. And even though this is totally contrary to everything he teaches and believes, that's insane.
Get married, and you run an office that gives them a license, I figure you have to.
Well, first of all, hundreds and hundreds of preachers have said in the last year, we will not use a state certificate to marry people anymore. And this, if you know your history in the Jewish and Hammurabi and all over Mesopotamia, the Middle East, marriage was a family affair, not church, not state. For thousands of years, it was a family affair. The government had nothing to do with it. And only recently have you had to have a license to marry. And now hundreds of pastors are saying, I'll not do it again. I'll never say at the end of my ceremony, by the powers invested in me, by the state of whatever, you're now man and wife. That is unnecessary, and preachers are getting away from that because the government has no right to define marriage or to approve marriage, by that way.
All right, there may be an issue. Look, if you really want to fight this, that may actually be an issue that will open it up. If, in fact, again, if I was a gay couple, who'd want to approach a problem like that?
Because they want an issue.
And have a nice wedding.
No, they want an issue. It's part of their agenda. They want to show they're in control, and you are going to approve us or else. That's why they went after that pizza parlor in Walkerton, Indiana, because it was simply to prove that you are going to agree to sell us pizzas for our reception, whether you like it or not. That's ridiculous. Now, of course, they weren't interested in having pizzas for the reception.
That's a confrontation. That's clearly asking for trouble.
That's what they want.
You're saying that's how they're working their agenda by looking for trouble.
That's exactly right. There's no question about that. And by the way, I have to be honest here, there are a number of homosexuals out there who know this is wrong, who know this is totalitarianism, who know that it's unjust, unfair, and it should be illegal. They know that, but they're rather quiet. But the activists, the homosexual lobby group are the ones who are determined. Let me tell you something very quickly. In the Indiana House of Representatives, I had a bill that decriminalized sodomy, and they came to my committee. And the place was packed, and a homosexual lead or spokesman said, "We simply want to be able to live together and not be bothered." And I said, and it was my bill that they were attacking, and I was trying to get approved. And I said, no, what you want is you want to get married, you want to move into the suburbs of Indianapolis, and you want to live in a split-level house and white picket fence and park matching Volvos in the driveway and be accepted and respected like anybody else. And I said, that's not going to happen as long as there are any Christians around.
Why not?
I was wrong.
Why not? Why can't they get the Volvos? By the way, that's a very American dream of the 50s. But neither here nor there. If they want that, why can't they?
They can't, because sodomy is has been illegal in every state and in every nation down through the centuries until just recent years.
It's legal in 37 states right now.
Barry, because something is legal, it doesn't make it right. Remember Dred Scott? Just because it's right, just because the Supreme Court says it, doesn't make it legal. And the Supreme Court is trying to decide right now about same-sex marriage, and the Supreme Court has no authority to do so. It's not. God defined marriage way back in the Garden of Eden. Christ reinforced it in Matthew and Mark, and it doesn't matter what the Supreme Court says. It's not going to change. It'll change some of the peripheries around it, but it's not going to change the fact that marriage is between a man and a woman. They can say what they want.
Certainly, the term could be slightly altered, and that would cause a lot less confrontation. I'm a liberal on this issue, if you can believe it. All right, let's go on to other ones. We're running out of time, and I've got a bunch more that I would like to bring up. Look, what you write is a separate article, all right? Forget the homosexuals. And as I said, as far as I know, 37 states you can get married. Why not just go over the border to the next state? It's
all done by the courts, by the way. Remember, this wasn't the people. The people didn't say that. The people disapproved all of this. It's the courts, the liberal courts, that have made this legal.
One way or another, they got who they somehow legalized in their courts, declaring this. All right, I'm going to go on to the next ones. All right. Quote, a businessman could hire anyone who choose and pay whatever salary they agreed on with whatever benefits or no benefits. The owner could not set the working hours, and the employee could work those hours or not. This was America. Now, you're looking at that as a very great picture, and my goodness, why? That encouraged monopolies and slave labor and whatever else you want.
No.
You can't really be serious.
No. That was America a few years ago, where a businessman had a right to run his own business as he saw fit. And now, frankly, it was because of the Civil Rights Act, and while there was a lot of problems with the treatment of blacks, but they overshot the thing and made it where a businessman had to pay a certain amount, and he could not. I believe a businessman should be able to fire whomever he pleases. He should be able to hire whomever he pleases. He should be able to contract. Surely you believe in the right to contract. That's his Americanism. And he should be able to say, we'll agree to pay you so much, you work so many hours, and that's his business and the employee's business. But not in America today. It's totally changed.
You're getting it back, and I think the results are people who shouldn't be struggling are struggling all over again. But without diving into this, there are people who just got too rich and they took the money out of my pocket.
Well, what they did is they built businesses and employed hundreds and thousands of people. And these people who are always talking about the gain that people make, the riches, there's nothing wrong with getting rich as long as they're honest. And they produced goods and services and jobs, and yet people are always knocking the rich man. I'm far from rich, but the rich men have a right to make it, and have a right to run their own business as long as they're not illegal. They have a right to do that. And yet we seem to think there's something wrong with being successful and making jobs for hundreds and for thousands of people.
I'm going to say this is not a Christian point of view. All right, I'm going all the way here. That there isn't. Listen, things were really much better 40 years ago.
Yeah, well, of course, the parable of Matthew 20, Christ makes it very clear that what I'm saying is legitimate, that a businessman has a right to hire whomever he pleases and pay whatever amount they both can agree on. And we teach that, and the Bible teaches that people ought to excel. They ought to make themselves so valuable to their boss that they'll get the raises and they'll get good pay. And they'll be the last person fired or laid off in hard times.
In ideal America, that sounds terrific. The unions arose because of massive exploitation, but neither here nor there. Look, I'm going on to finish you off. Let's finish. Oh, you know what? You wrote a whole article on Billy Graham, but part of it was about, he was a crook. His name was Mickey Cohen, who Graham defended. Now, look what you write here. Cohen was considering becoming a Christian, but was reluctant to reject his Jewish roots to become a Southern Baptist. That's a massive leap, which he should have made, in my opinion. Boy, don't I agree.
Yes, I agree. I think I'm not Southern Baptist, by the way.
No Jews should become a Southern Methodist for any reason.
The fact is the Apostle Paul was a Jew, and he became a Christian, and Peter was a Jew, and he became a Christian.
Well, I'm not. Let me tell you.
Sure, that's right. And you have that right, Barry. You have every right not to be a Christian, and evidently you've chosen not to. No, it's not a matter of thanking me. It's a matter of that's your right as an American. However, I, and others have a right to go into all the world and preach the gospel that Jesus Christ died and rose again, and the people can go to heaven by trusting Him.
Back to you. It's not fair. If there was a war out there for converts, maybe. But if it's one way, we really resent it.
There's nothing wrong with preaching what you believe. Everybody, the Muslims, of course, are doing this.
There is if it's the people who don't want to hear.
They don't have to hear. If they don't want to listen, they don't. Nobody is forced to come to hear me preach. When I preach on the radio or television, they don't have to listen. They can always turn it off. They don't have to hear. But many people have a right to listen and to make up their own mind. This is America.
Well,
What's
Mickey
wrong with
Cohen
diversity?
made up his own mind. Good for Mickey.
That's right. Well, Mickey made up his. That's right, and he lived a very wicked life. He was a chief mobster in L.A. He was. They tried to kill him 11 times. The mobs tried to kill him 11 times, and he lived a horrible life.
He stayed a Jewish gangster.
What?
He stayed a Jewish gangster.
That's exactly right, and he died a miserable death. And I believe he should have trusted. He should have listened to Graham. He should have trusted Christ as Savior.
No, he shouldn't have. They were playing each other off. All right, neither here nor there. Let's put a stop to the conversion stuff. Try to stop converting. Now, look, we've gone through a lot of subjects. I mean, look at this that you write. I don't believe any entity of government has any constitutional right to lend money. That's why we have banks. You trust banks?
No, not really. But I don't believe the government has the authority to lend money.
I agree. They both suck.
Okay, we agree on something. Great. You're right on one thing.
Oh, I'm right on lots of things.
Oh, okay.
Look, believe it or not, I agree with most of your positions. In a lot of respects, I don't like piercing and I don't like tattooing. I think it's unhealthy, and why do it? All right, we're not going to go through it. Listen, we had a good conversation, boys. Folks,
great.
This has been Barry Chamish with an interesting guest this week. And next week, I've got one booked already, and he is William McNaught. See you in a week. Night, all. Thank you very much, Don.
Yes, sir. Bye.
Bye, all.
If you'd like to get a copy of this program, you may subscribe at FirstAmendmentRadio.com for only $45 a month, and you'll receive an MP3 CD weekly of all of our programs. As a bonus, we'll send you a password for our audio archives online. That's a $15 value. Or you may request any month of any program on one MP3 CD for a minimum donation of only $25, or any single program on tape, MP3 CD, or CD for only $15. You may do all of this online at FirstAmendmentRadio.com. Just follow the instructions to make a donation or subscribe. You may also adopt an hour of your favorite program. Please don't forget that most of the programs on FirstAmendmentRadio.com are listener-supported. Don't do Internet? Then call 559-781-3773 and we'll be honored to help you. Thank you from all of us here at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. The Supreme Court appears split on whether same-sex couples have a constitutional right to get married. Jerry Bodland reports.
The focus during oral arguments, as with other cases, was on Justice Anthony Kennedy, who said it would be hard for the court to say it knows better than what's been the long-standing definition of marriage as being between a man and a woman.
This definition has been with us for millennia.
But Kennedy also asked tough questions of the lawyer for states that ban same-sex marriage, as did Chief Justice John Roberts. The High Court is expected to issue its ruling on the constitutionality of same-sex marriage in late June.
Kathy Roos with the Family Research Council says Kennedy's remarks stood out to her.
What keeps coming